everyone, and welcome to my kitchen. My name is Hannah, and I am a nutrition educator with Cornell Cooperative Extension of Jefferson County. And today is another class in the series, What Can I Cook With?, where I take your suggestions for those ingredients that you have around your house and maybe you need a little inspiration for, and I try to give you that inspiration and show you some different things to cook with them. So today's request was for frozen vegetables. Specifically, how can I cook frozen vegetables as a side that's not in the microwave and that makes them a little more exciting? So I'm going to show you a couple different things that you can do with your frozen veggies today. So the first thing we can do is roast them. So I've got my oven preheated to 425, and while it was preheating, I had a pan with some oil in it. And that's really important. That's going to help keep our frozen vegetables from getting mushy as they cook, because as soon as I put them on the pan, they will start cooking. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that out and show you what I mean. All right, and then be very careful because hot oil is looser. It spreads more easily than cold oil, so you really don't want to get any of this on yourself. So you can see there, I have a fairly generous amount, maybe about 2 tablespoons on here. So I will be roasting some diced butternut squash, but you can roast whatever you want. Some might work better than others in your oven and to your preferences, but it's all worth a shot. I particularly like broccoli roasted a lot. So I'm just going to add kind of an even layer, and you'll see it's going to spatter. And as the cold and icy frozen vegetables hit the pan, it might splash a little bit. So just be careful and keep your hands out of the way. Oh, it did not splatter as much as I was worried it will. Great. Not going to do very much because this is just going to be a side. And then so just go ahead and toss it really quickly. Get the oil all coating. This will help the pieces brown and not really like mush up. And then make sure that they're all pretty spread out. All right, so that's about good, and we'll go ahead and pop it back in the oven. All right, and I'm setting my timer for 10 minutes. A lot of times when frozen vegetables are first picked and prepared for freezing, they are blanched. That means that the vegetable pieces are dropped in boiling water for just a couple seconds and then either flash frozen or put in an ice bath to cool down before they're frozen. This helps preserve the nutrients, which is part of the reason that frozen vegetables are such a good option. But because they've already had that little bit of cooking time, when you cook frozen vegetables, you don't need as much time as you would if you're cooking them from fresh. And this is also important to notice when you are adding them to other dishes. So if you're adding frozen vegetables to stir fries or soups, you don't need to add them when you add your fresh vegetables. You can add them towards the end of the cooking process, and this will help preserve their flavor and their texture. One other thing I wanted to notice or to point out is when you purchase your frozen vegetables, try to look for ones that aren't clumped together. So I don't know if you can tell, but I'm squeezing this. The pieces are all moving around. The squash cubes are all pretty much individual. There might be a few stuck together, but they're not in like one big clump. The clumping happens when they are defrosted in the transportation process and then refrozen. And this can really affect the texture and the overall quality of them. Some of the nutrients can degrade a little bit. So try to avoid that when you can. So the other recipe I'm going to be showing you today is for some pea pesto. And so this uses frozen peas. I feel like I always end up with a bag of peas and I use them for like half a recipe and then I kind of run out of things to use them for. So pea pesto is a great way to use them up and just get a little more veggies in your day. So you can have it on toast in the morning. You can use it as a pasta sauce. It's pretty versatile. So I'm going to go ahead. I have about like a half a bag here, maybe about 16, 12 ounces. And I'm just going to make all of it because, like I said, I didn't have any other plans for my peas. And the pea pesto can also be frozen. Let's go ahead and add it all into a blender. I thawed them for a little bit in my refrigerator. So even though they are not animal products, we still need to follow great food safety practices and make sure that we're thawing them either overnight in the refrigerator or in cold water in our sink, where we change the water every 30 minutes. So I think in the refrigerator is the easiest, and frozen vegetables do not take as long to thaw. And these ones don't have to be completely thawed. You might be able to see that there's some ice crystals in there. So then I'm going to add in 3 cloves of garlic. I've already peeled them, but I can just throw them in like that. I'm going to add in some lemon. And like a lot of pestos, this one's really going to be to taste. So the great thing about pestos, you don't really have to worry about messing up the textures or the balance. It just has to taste good to you. And so we can kind of play around with it a little bit. I'm going to add in some lemon juice. I did just want to show you this really cool trick that I learned last Wednesday at our From the Kitchen Facebook Live videos. So if you haven't checked those out, I learn a lot every week, and I hope everyone else does too. So when you get lemons, to ensure that you're using every usable part of them and none's going to waste, April suggested that you give them a good zest. So I don't know if you can really tell. You could use a zester, you could use a little grater, and you just take off the rind. So just that nice yellow part. You don't go all the way to the white because the pith can be kind of bitter. But you can save that zest. I put mine in the freezer now, and it's going to be great for use at future times. There's nothing worse, I think, than, well, there's a lot of things worse, but I'm always sad in the kitchen when I buy a lemon just for the zest or just for the juice, and then the rest of it goes to waste. I'm just going to go ahead and juice this half of a lemon. And then with this bit, again, waste not. You can put this in your garbage disposal, and it will give you some cleaning properties of your garbage disposal, make it smell a little better. You could compost it, you could throw it away. But if you've been very clean when you're using it, you can add it to your water and get some lemon-infused flavor there. So I'm going to need a little bit more juice than that. I don't know if you can tell. It's maybe about a tablespoon, a half a tablespoon. And I've got some other lemons that can be juiced. All right. There's that. And then I'm going to use my clean fingers and pull out the lemon seeds. This is important because even if you think that it would get ground up in the pesto, lemon seeds are very bitter and have some chemical compounds that are not pleasant tasting, which could affect the flavor of your pesto. So you do want to make sure you're getting them all out, even though we'll be blending it. Go ahead and add this much in. You can see now it's maybe about 2 tablespoons, almost a quarter of a cup maybe. So we'll just go ahead and add that in. I think it makes it nice and bright and citrusy. I'm going to add a little bit of grated Parmesan cheese. This is a little bit salty. We'll add a little bit of creaminess. If you don't want to go all in for the pea pesto, you can always add a handful of peas to your normal basil pesto if you're making kale pesto. Peas are a good source of protein, and they also make dishes very creamy. So they're a good addition for that reason. All right, so I'm not adding very much. See, this is maybe about 2 tablespoons. No, it's closer to 1 tablespoon. So I do want 2 tablespoons. I'm going to grate a little bit more. And I should mention, if you are watching this, I am keeping an eye on the chat. So if you have any questions or any frozen vegetables that you would in particular like some ideas for, please feel free to drop them in there and I'll try to give you some ideas. All right, so I had a little bit extra, but that's okay. Let's throw this all in. All right, we got this here, and then you can add in about a tablespoon of olive oil. I am out of olive oil, so you'll see I am using vegetable oil, which is okay. It still has those good, healthy fats and then the unsaturated fats. And I'm going to give a couple grinds of pepper. I do like my pesto fairly peppery, so I will kind of make this with a heavier hand. If you don't like it super peppery, you can just go down a little bit, don't use as much. Again, it's all about making flavors that you enjoy. So I'm going to go ahead and put my lid on, and I'm going to go ahead and blend this. So my blender is right here. You might want to turn down your volume a little bit so it's not super loud for you. I don't think there's a way I can mute myself on YouTube Live. So here's your warning to turn down your volume, and we will blend. And we'll go ahead and scrape this down a little bit. You can add in more oil at this point if you'd like. It will help it blend up a little bit better. I don't want a super smooth texture for this. I want it to be a little bit chunkier, so I'm not going to add in any more oil. I'm just going to keep blending. Okay, here's your warning to turn down your volume. Might need to give it one more whirl. You can really see the delineation down here. It's pretty chunky, and at the top there's still some whole peas. And I also really want to make sure that the garlic and the Parmesan are all evenly distributed. You could also do this in a food processor. I'm using a blender, but a food processor would be great. If you're very ambitious or have a young child that you're trying to keep entertained, you could put all these ingredients. Make sure you mince the garlic, but you could put all these ingredients in a gallon-sized bag or in a bowl with something to smush it with and do this by hand. It would just take a bit longer, but it's fine. Okay, I'm going to give it one more whirl. Okay, there's my one more whirl. Get a scoop for you to see the texture. Oops, it's very slippery. So here's the texture. You can see there are still some Parmesan shards in there, which is actually, I didn't plan that, but it sounds pretty delightful to me. You get some nice salty, cheesy bits. So I'm going to set that to the side. Make sure you do give it a taste just so you know if you need to adjust the flavors. And that's great. So now I'm going to check on my butternut squash. I'm not sure if you heard them beeping in the oven because the blender was going so loud. Let me pull those out. Okay. So these are looking good. Give them a good stir. We want all the sides to be kind of cooking evenly coated with oil. And I'm going to put them in for maybe about 5 more minutes. That depends on your preference, though. At this point, I can tell they are completely done. There's not going to be frozen spots in the center. But I like them a little bit crispier. So again, that was 425. That's usually the temperature that I like to go with when I'm roasting anything. You could go a little bit higher at 450 if you're really trying to get a char on it, but I think it's easy for it to burn out too quickly there. So while those are cooking, I just wanted to share a couple other rapid fire ideas for what you could do with your frozen vegetables, as well as ways to spice them up. So if you're steaming them, you can add in some different seasonings. So I like seasoning, especially broccoli. Let me see, I can look in my cabinet right here and show you. I think I mentioned, maybe it was last week, I'm a huge fan of sesame oil. So I really love tossing frozen broccoli or steamed broccoli in with some soy sauce, a little bit of sesame oil, some sesame seeds, and eating it like that. You could do that either before or after you steam it. There's not really going to be a taste difference. I usually do it after because I forget. You could also, as I mentioned, frozen vegetables go really great in soups and stews. If you add them towards the end of the cooking process, that way they won't dissolve down into mush, but will retain a lot of their flavor and their shape. And they're a great way to get some extra veggies in your day. One thing also that's pretty great about frozen vegetables, we talk a lot about on here about reducing your sodium intake. So frozen vegetables, like fresh vegetables, don't have any naturally occurring sodium. So unless you get frozen vegetables that have an added sauce or something on them, your sodium from these should be 0. And they do have a nutrition facts label on them, so you can double check if you seem like there might be an additive or something like that. Another great way to use frozen vegetables is in your smoothies, or especially children's smoothies. You can add in spinach and it will have very little effect on the taste if you're judicious in using it. I also really like putting butternut squash in because it adds a nice sweetness. And if you do like butternut squash and pumpkin puree and cinnamon and blend it with some milk or some other fruits like apples, you get a really nice fall treat. So that's a great way to incorporate your veggies at the start of your day, because we should be getting about 2 to 3 cups or 5 servings of vegetables every day. And so starting your day off with some in your smoothie is a great way to get you onto that target. You can also blend them. Sorry, I have my little note sheet up here, so I make sure I don't forget to tell you all anything. They are really great blended into dipping sauces. So if you have some non-fat Greek yogurt, you could blend in some spinach. The one thing about frozen spinach is for a lot of recipes, you do need to thaw it and squeeze out the moisture. Except for things like soups where they have a lot of moisture in them, you want to make sure that you're not adding all that kind of like watery moisture into it. So if you're making it into a yogurt dip, you do want to make sure that you are thawing and draining, squeezing out your spinach. And then you can blend it in with a lot of really delicious flavorings and kind of make a green goddess style or ranch style dressing that has just a little bit of extra nutrients from your vegetables. And then also it makes it a pretty cool color. Beets and butternut squash can also be used in a really similar way. The other thing about choosing frozen vegetables, what was I gonna shoot? I'm so sorry, I just had a mind blank. I was telling you about adding them later in the cooking process. Oh, so when it comes to moisture content, so some frozen vegetables inherently have more moisture in them than others. So frozen spinach is an example of one that has a lot of moisture in it, and things like butternut squash that are a little bit denser usually do not have as much moisture in them. So that can also affect what you will be using your frozen vegetables in and how you are preparing them. The other thing is you don't necessarily need to cook your frozen vegetables to use them. So things like frozen corn, if you want to just go ahead and give it a good thaw and then mix it in if you're making a tomato corn salad with feta cheese, that would be really delicious. And you don't actually have to worry about cooking it. As I mentioned before, a lot of them are already cooked, at least partially when they're blanched. And so that will give you kind of the texture that you're looking for. That's a little bit different from fresh. Sorry, so this is about to go off. Okay. Go ahead and angle you down. Oh, perfect. Okay, yeah, so these are looking really good. I'm actually gonna let them be done now. You can see it really does kind of crisp up. Can you tell? And I can tell when I'm pushing my fork in, it does have like a little bit of resistance on the surface and then gets softer towards the center. So that is going to give me that nice kind of crispy outer layer that you would get if you were roasting fresh vegetables or something like that. At this point, now that I'm done cooking this, I can add my seasonings. You want to try to avoid adding any spices or herbs before you cook them. Sometimes in the high heat, your spices and herbs can burn, and that does not make for a very appetizing dish. Obviously, yeah, you can use whatever flavors that you like. I really like smoked paprika because it's got that smokiness and it complements the sweetness of the butternut squash really well. But you could add whatever you like and experiment with different spice blends. I think if you put like a taco seasoning on here as well, that would be really delicious. I'm just going to go ahead and toss it right in the pan. And this will help, the oil will help it stick to the butternut squash and really coat it. And it smells really good. If you haven't tried smoked paprika, I do recommend it. It has like a little bit extra than the normal paprika. Okay, so there were a couple different ways there that you can spice up your frozen vegetable routine and make them into slightly different sides and main dishes. All right, thank you so much for joining with me tonight. If you have any questions that come up, or if you have any frozen vegetables that you really want some inspiration for, some ideas on, please feel free to message us at Cornell Cooperative Extension of Jefferson County on Facebook, or you can leave a comment on this video and I'll be sure to respond back to you. If you watched this video all the way through, I would really appreciate it if you could fill out the survey that's down in the description box. This helps us with our federal reporting so we know who in our community is accessing this content and make sure that we're providing relevant videos and things for everyone. Again, thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you all next week for another video in What Can I Cook With? So, special announcement, I should let you all know that starting next week, we're going to be shifting to a slightly different format. So instead of using pantry staples and things around the house, I'm going to be choosing a different seasonal vegetable each week and showing you some ideas about how to use it. And I'm really excited to go start roaming my farmers markets and seeing what kind of interesting new dishes I can make for you all. All right, have a great week.